All right, man.
What's going on?
Welcome to the nights.
Hey,
I'm
you
at
went to a meeting, huh?
what meeting? I finally made it. I've
You're a
been,
knight. How'd you find out about it? I mean, I told you about this a couple of years ago.
yeah, I've been looking to be a knight my whole life. So look, man, it's official. Look at this.
Oh, they gave you the rosary bead.
Got me everything. That was an incredible ceremony. It was in Invalides. It was in the chapel of Napoleon.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I got inducted around the tomb of Napoleon. I was shocked. I was just there to meet some people, and all of a sudden I got inducted.
How did you get notified that they wanted you to come? I mean, did they check your background?
Yeah, when I was in actually the old department in Republic, so I had a calling. Well, we should talk seriously about this. After my father died. My father died 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Around April 10 years ago. I got to do my math. I don't know if it's 11 years ago. I think it was 10 years ago. And then I was teaching in Bulgaria at the American University. That's when he died. And then some things conspired for us and pulled and pushed us to actually come to unify with Flo's parents here in Paris. It just made sense. But I mean, just to cut a long story.
Good to have family around, sure.
Yeah, to cut a long story short, yeah, the kids were young, and one of the things was, which was a wonderful idea, for her to reconnect with Paris because she had such a bad experience growing up in Paris, and I swore that actually she'd have a great experience if we did, which was largely true actually. Actually, she's living the life of Riley here. She's working in a like you, a pharmaceutical company, just like right around the corner.
I'm not doing that, but I did, yeah, for a long time.
You're off the wagon. I got it, man. Now you're professional, rabble rouser. You're the next Roger Stone, actually, man. This is good, man.
Roger Stone.
That's yours. Cheers, man. So anyway,
I have a little wine. Phil told me this bottle's about $500. Yeah.
What? Are you serious? Yeah, I have this argument with him that it's all bull. That he can't tell the difference between a $10 bottle and a $500 bottle.
Well, sometimes you can't, but there is a price on a product.
It's all psychological, man.
There is a price on something, so the price is what it is.
Many a taste test with Coca-Cola to wine to freaking expensive cakes and cheap cakes, and the cheap ones always win for some reason.
But you don't have the trained palate. There's a whole science to it.
No, but that's the whole point. Then it means it's just psychological. It's not real. It's just buying into the bull. More than
no, I think it's a science to it where you develop a muscle, and there's people that could agree on something.
But I mean, if it's not naturally popular. If it doesn't naturally attract you, then what really is it? You're just buying into the culture that if it tastes more tannin, it means more expensive. I don't know what it is.
Well, it's an acquired taste. You have to, just like, if you made up your own philosophy right now and you said good is good, bad is bad.
No, that's my whole point.
I'm just saying, you'd probably be laughed at,
No, but that's my whole point. That's my whole point. No, it should not be cultural. It should be based on something that's real. That there's something.
Well, it is real, and it is cultural, and there's a whole science behind it. We mock modern art. That it's subjective, right? But this is something you're taking in as food, So you have to have the palate for it, the senses, I believe, and there's very few that are experts in it.
But that's my whole point. That if there's a cultural, psychological dimension to it, that's when it enters into the realm of ancient art of Bushido. That's it.
I got you.
You used to kill me with that. The ancient art of Bushido.
How was the experience you had today? You said it was in French?
It was amazing. I felt like the fourth musketeer, the fifth musketeer. Yeah.
Did you understand any of the ceremony? Or?
No, I got married in 2 countries, and I also did this induction, all in different countries, without understanding a word that I had made a note to. So so I have a way out.
So you didn't understand the language when you got married because you married a French woman, and you married someone in Colombia, so Spanish.
French. Yeah, for some reason I avoid the States for everything. I don't know why.
Take it for granted, man. You take the U.S. for granted.
Yeah, and for some reason I was zoned out when I pledged the frat, so I don't remember that too much. And Quill and Dale, the Quill and Dagger, the Gothic.
Hey, he doesn't respond anymore. That was like 3 days ago.
Oh, okay. I have someone who's interested.
I shut him down with that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, very interesting. I met someone who just became a knight. It's very interesting. The guy is from Saint Cyr, which is like the French equivalent of West Point.
Yes, great wine, too.
He's really? I didn't know that. Yeah. So he's military. This guy's military up. and now he's doing philosophy-esque writing. So we're going to invite him, and very knowledgeable. He's half American like my son, American French.
Nice.
So, but the funny thing is, he said, wonderful idea about the podcast that we're doing. The thing is that it's good to have people who can really, balance out the arguments. And he said, you have to find someone who actually can articulate a leftist point of view really well. You have to get, and he said, do you know anyone? And we both started laughing because we were racking our brains on people we know and people we know in writing. And not one I really, to be honest, respect enough intellectually to think that actually they could really hold their weight. The reason being, this is a very strange thing. Leftist arguments don't hold intellectual weight. So I'm going to throw it out there, but I kind of.
No, you told me this, yeah.
What do you think? I feel. Well, Cornel West. So here we go. Let's invite him. He's just going to be like, my brother. It's like, Michael Harrington, and right, right.
Well,
my brother. Remember me in the Matrix, my brother. It's that socialism, my brother. Come on.
I humbly ask you how there could be such a divide. For example, in the United States, Trump, who is a free market capitalist, and then you have someone like Bernie, who's a socialist.
Uh-huh.
So how could the divide be so large? But I guess this is common in Europe as well, no? But it's never been this obvious in America.
Okay,
where you have
the
a
point
socialist running.
is there a good argument for socialism? That's my whole point.
No, I don't think there is. And if you don't mind me just, it's funny you brought that up. I just want to bring up what the Pope said.
Mm-hmm.
And this is from Breitbart, a conservative site.
Yeah.
The Pope said we need to tax the rich. He calls for a global wealth redistribution.
That's something they've been pushing. I think that's connected to the Green New Deal as well, too. And,
that would be their ultimate goal.
And Andrew Yang was pushing the idea of a universal basic income.
Right. And, we could talk about that as well, but there are a lot of people on public assistance who are getting that basic income. I told you when I was working with some artists, they were getting free housing, they were getting food stamps, and then they were getting a stipend as well. So if you average that out, that had to be a couple $1,000s a month. It almost paid not to work. It paid not to work. And if some of them were ambitious, they worked off the books or did something else.
Yeah.
But let me quote the Pope here. He said, today's structure of sin include repeated tax cuts for the richest people, often justified in the name of investment and development. Yeah. He told the meeting organized by the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think in the words of John Maynard Keynes, when he gave a presentation on his view of economics in the White House, was shocked to see that the president was so illiterate in economics.
Yeah, right.
And so it might be the case. I mean, the Pope seems to be well-meaning. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt.
FDR.
I'm a knight of Columbus now. I have to defend the faith, right? Properly.
Sol and Friedman, I believe, spoke about FDR and how his tariffs, Smoot-Hawley tariffs, and some other things that he did prolonged the Depression by 10 years. Actually, we were getting out of the Depression, and then it was government intervention that prolonged the Depression. They never talk about the great things that Hoover did where he fed Europe. But I just want to say one more thing.
Save them from famine. We forget about that.
He said that poverty is on the rise worldwide. Actually, this is monumentally false. He said that poverty is on the rise worldwide and the poor increase around us. And then he also said with the passage of time,
that's not true, because actually poverty is actually dramatically decreased over the
this is what I'm saying. So, these statements need to be checked, because this is what Bernie's pushing as well. He said with the passage of time and the advances of civilization, the number of poor people increases rather than diminish. That's not true. And we could go into Steven Pinker's book, who actually dispels that. Steven Pinker said in 1800, 99% of the world was poor. 99%. He said the rate of poverty now, the number of those impoverished is probably, I think, 10%. That means those that make more than $2 a day.
Yeah.
And he talks about the rise of the Western world, how wealth has increased about 20 times from 1950 now. And then he said Asian countries followed after, in the 70s. What I was trying to say is that these statements by the Pope are not true, that he's saying people are getting poorer, but it's not true. People are getting richer. Even the lowest of the low are getting out of poverty as compared to 1950 and 1800, where most people were poor, 70% in 1950 and about 99% in 1800.
If that's the case, why are they getting richer? They're getting richer because of liberal economic policies? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, they're getting richer because they've adopted free market policies and trade. And I mean, think about, I'll give you an example. Right. Yeah, I brought up China. I said China has implemented many free trade policies. I mean, it was Nixon who opened up China, and they became the assembly line for the world.
Yeah.
So their wealth has grown to the point where 1970, 99% of the Chinese were living on less than $2 a day. Now that's about 8% or 10% of the Chinese are living that way. So their GDP per person has grown incrementally much higher, and it's not due to communist policies, as Bernie tried to say. Well, let me just say one thing with the Brookings Institute. He said they stated in the late 2018, the world is currently experiencing the lowest prevalence of extreme poverty ever recorded in human history. Less than 8%. And this falls with each passing year. According to the International Poverty Line, people are considered to be extreme poverty if they live on less than $1.90 a day, $1.90.
Yeah.
In the world today, less than 10% lives in extreme poverty, whereas 30 years ago, 1991, 37% lived in extreme poverty. And as I said, 1800, 90%. Subsisted on less than $1 a day. Today, that's zero. Global poverty rate has fallen across every single poverty line. And people are averaging at least $10 a day.
Wow. Unbelievable.
So we talk about this. These alarmists.
Well, let me ask you.
Yes.
In terms of the idea of a universal basic income, if people are living actually in extreme poverty, do people around the world have the obligation to give up their wealth to help them, no matter what caused that poverty, and no matter whether they live within our country or not, from a moral standpoint?
Yeah, and I think we do have I think there could be a moral standpoint, but what is proven to be the only remedy to lift people out of poverty is free markets with good laws, respect for the law, the ability to own property, and social mobility. So everything we have in the United States.
No matter how well functioning a system is, and no matter how liberal it is, there are always going to be people who are going to be the wretched poor unless people give them incomes. Some people, I say, I don't know how to say this politically, it's impolitic the way I'm going to say it, but they, in the words of Jesse from the Five, there are going to be people who are going to be lazy, uninformed, and jealous. And you cannot stop that situation. It's even biblical. Even Jesus Christ said, the poor you will always have. Given the idea that there's always going to be people who are going to be on the absolute bottom, if we assume that that bottom is really bad, even if it's actually much of their own fault, do we still have an obligation to help them or not? Or do we let them just wallow in misery?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, if we talk in American terms, we have a tremendous safety net in the United States where trillions of dollars have been spent on these programs. So, many believe,
even if it's their fault, we should help.
Yes, many believe. Many have stated that the United States doesn't have any true examples of what poverty is, because what we consider poor, living under the poverty line, is someone who lives in a home who has air conditioning, food, an iPhone, and a car or two, and TV.
Yeah.
You know, if you equate that with India or China or Mexico, you're living in the top 10%. So in America, I think we have it covered. But of course,
I'm saying, okay. Let's say actually now, like going back to the, what's good wine from bad wine argument. If there's if human beings are relatively the same, and if we can actually judge what is an absolute level of poverty, not in relative terms, but in absolute terms, that is to say that one cannot, for example, provide for another child, for example, that level of poverty, that people have a hard time eating, for example, and basic health. I mean, not cosmetic surgery, all right? Not like Argentina and Brazil and Venezuela. I'm talking about real poverty, okay? Where they're not, because these days people say that they're poor, and yet they're obese. I mean, obviously there's something wrong with that picture. Science is telling me you're not that poor, you're eating something, right? But I'm talking about skin and bones type poverty. In those situations, even if it's their fault, do we have a responsibility within our country to provide for them, as like wards of the state, as like you would provide for destitute children, in a sense? I mean, the analogy.
Yeah, I think we do.
Okay,
I think you.
Let me add to that. We can argue on how much we provide for them. I got that. Give them enough that they're going to drive around, with an attitude, with a roller. No. Okay, I understand that. Okay.
A Range Rover?
No, a roller. That means a Rolls Royce in British words, man. A roller.
Oh, okay.
A roller. You're not going to necessarily provide for a Harvard education, right? I mean, I don't know. We could debate that, I suppose. I guess unless they're brilliant and they deserve it. Okay, whatever. Anyway, now let's imagine those same people are whole peoples or countries. Do we have a responsibility, for example, in sub-Saharan Africa, to give whatever we can for those people who are really the wretched of the poor, even if it's their fault for not adopting liberal systems, for being dum-dums, for having corrupt, inefficient governments and cultures? Do we still, that potentially are at war, like the Congo, do we, as relative rich people, give to them ad infinitum to help them if they're in that situation?
Well, once again, I don't think "give" is the correct adjective that needs to be used. Okay. We should promote healthy governments and healthy economies.
But if but let's be honest,
maybe microloans.
I got the long-term argument for that. But if you know that promotion is going to take a long time and people are going to die in the interim, that time may take decades. Maybe it may
sure.
It may never come enough to actually help them out of those situations. And the most immediate thing to do is to just provide them income. And the hard thing is, a lot of that's going to go in the hands of the oligarchs, of the elites.
Right.
And these people are going to be miserable anyway, but maybe something can trickle down and they'll be brought out of poverty quickly.
Or maybe to sustain life, at least. That's what we're talking about.
But there you go. But that's the situation.
To sustain life, yeah.
So the argument.
I mean, the question needs to be made: how many times has this been done? What aid has been given?
Yeah.
I know George Bush pushed, I think, $40 billion to Africa to combat AIDS.
No, George Bush is a nice guy.
What else? Well, I'm just saying, what else needs to be done, and what else have we done, and is it possible to transform these countries? I mean, we're talking vast areas with a lot of people.
He gave us the Iraq War, in Afghanistan, and probably 9/11. But hey, man, he pledged money. I don't know.
Well, I just want to
who knows?
Just to speak on Steven Pinker's book, just to speak about what the Pope was saying.
Yeah.
And the book by Steven Pinker is Enlightenment and Progress. And this is from The Roots of Progress, a blog, and he says, the theme of enlightenment now is contained in its subtitle. It is that reason, science, and humanism leads to progress. And the corollary is to keep it up. And Pinker talks about how there are those who want to burn it all down. Wow. He's saying we're making incredible progress. Mm-hmm. And almost these ideals are not consistently upheld and are often under attack. Therefore, we need to fortify and defend them. It almost seems like the opposite of Bernie Sanders and what the Pope is pushing.
Yeah.
I was talking to your brother yesterday, going to your nephew's practice, but these Bernie Sanders and the Pope, they act as though people are walking around and just dying in the middle of the street because of lack of nutrition.
No, they are.
Lack of medication.
No, they are dying in the streets, but they're dying because, in America, because of bad choices, because of drugs.
Okay, but even if that's true,
and a lot of mental illness.
And that's going to happen. But what percentage? We're not talking about 60% of the people living this way.
No, we're not.
It's a small percentage, you know? And I'm not saying...
And ironically, it's also a larger percentage in liberal-controlled cities, right, and regions. So once again, it goes back to the good governance versus bad governance dichotomy, or good culture versus bad culture dichotomy. Right?
So you're going to like this. Pinker calls out a number of counter-enlightenment ideas that gave us science. Galileo, he calls a romantic green movement, which subordinates human interests to a transcendent entity, the ecosystem. He says it's enlightenment environmentalism. And then he says declinism, the idea that civilization is in steady decline and on the verge of the collapse. And he also says there is an encroaching on the domain of religion or values, or blames it for social ills or racism to war.